presence sitting next to them, and you've become this receptacle of something very deep and very special. And so, as a healing presence, as someone that sits and comes alongside someone, what we would say in my faith tradition, evenly yoked, coming alongside and walking alongside with them, it's a very special moment, because not everybody does that. Carl Rogers noted that there are 3 conditions that create helpful and healing relationships, and they flow naturally from every religion and philosophy. And see if this relates to your faith tradition. So the 3 conditions of a healing relationship are genuineness. Genuineness. Being present to another without pretense, not being there only in the role, but not hiding behind any facade. So I have a song that I love. Sarah Gross is one of my favorite musicians. And she says, dress down your pretty little faith. Give me something real. Leave out the thee and thou and speak to me now. Speak to my pain and confusion. Speak through my fears and my pride. Speak to the part of me that knows I am something deep down inside. Wouldn't that be great if someone said that to you? You know, what is it that's deep down inside? And then empathy, attending to them as this unique person with their fears and loneliness and desires. And so Gabriel Marcel says, to be means to be with is one of Father Hester's favorite quotes. He used to tell us that. Some of you know Father Hester, know of his legacy in our department. To be means to be with, to come alongside, to hear, to listen. I always tell people, you know, our Creator gave us, what, how many ears? 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that means how much more listening should we do besides speaking? It's about twice as much, okay? So if we're the receptacle for their concerns or the things that are on their heart that day, then we should be listening twice as much as we speak. It's just kind of it's kind of our anatomy, isn't it? And maybe that's a good reminder. Okay, so then unconditional positive regard, love and compassion without judgment or criticism, without conditions. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a wonderful theologian, says, we must learn to regard people less in the light of what they do or omit to do, and more in the light of what they suffer. You know, everyone's got a soft spot, don't we? And when someone's in, Susan Scott will be talking about the life of a patient, or the world of the patient, and what that looks like. And what is it that's tough? You know, they're in a gown that may not fit really well. They've taken, you know, most of their dignity is taken away. They're in a bed. They're trying to cope with maybe tubes and wires and all sorts of things. And so what is it that we can do to be that presence, to give them some comfort? So why a healing present matter? When we are present to a patient, there is an alleviation of loneliness. We are now entering their world. Not in a way that would be inappropriate, but just to say, I'm here. I would love to hear your story. How many people have a story to tell? Anybody here? If every hand should go up. Okay. Every person has a story. And what is so wonderful is sometimes we get to hear just a little chapter of it when we sit next to a person. They tell us a little bit of their story, and what a gift that is to us. And that's why we take that presence and that moment of patience and let it simmer a little bit. We don't want to rush on and just kind of say, well, you know, in a way, we're saying you don't matter a whole lot to me because I have at least 5 more patients I have to see. It's not about numbers. It's about being present. It's an affirmation of the patient as a person. It's the communication of caring and compassion that stimulates the patient's own healing resources because we're listening to them. And it's a communication of hope and faith. Now, we have to be a little careful with hope because, and I'm sure Lori will talk about this tonight, because if we talk too much about ourselves, then it's not really a conversation, is it? It's kind of a lecture. And if we give too much hope, that may be giving that person a false hope that we really don't have the privilege to tell. But we will say that we'll stay with you. You know, we won't know what the outcome is. We don't know if you're going this or this or this. But I want to stay with you and hear your story. That has meaning. Okay, I think I'm marching through this, Tom. How am I doing? Is Tom Keeper going to hold me out? Okay. How do we develop and increase our healing presence? And this is something we probably don't cover a lot, but I think everyone needs to have a spiritual life in order to prepare ourselves and Bruce, you may be covering some of this next week, to prepare ourselves for that visit. And so how do we do that? We nurture our own spiritual beliefs, because each one of you will be assigned to your own faith area. We don't try to cross-pollinate, because we know that you're comfortable in your own faith. That's why you're here. And so we will try to assign you patients that fit that particular area where you feel most comfortable. And then by being in touch with our core self in person, not just living in the world through the many roles we're called on to play. Maybe you're a mother, a caretaker, caregiver, you might be a taxi driver for all your kids or whatever. But who are you when no one else is looking? What's the soul person? And so we listen to our own voice, your own soul. Listen to your own voice, your own soul. Too many people listen to the noise of the world instead of themselves. So there may be a time in your day when you can just sit and listen and be who you are and not have to do. I mean, there is a reason we're called human beings and not human doings. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. The idea is that to be a human being means to be, to sit, to be patient, to ponder. And a human doing is what we often do in our work, and we totally understand that. But I want you to get in touch a little bit with your own soul and your own spiritual disciplines, so that you have then that energy and that passion to go out and visit others. We take time to pray, and I know prayer is universal in all of our faiths in some way, to reflect on who we are, what our core values are, living into these values. And then we associate with others who help us affirm who we are and who we want to be. I have what I call my 2 o'clock friends, my good friends, the ones I can call at 2 o'clock and they won't mind, in the morning that is. And you may have other friends that you're fairly close with, maybe just 2 or 3, that's all it really takes. But people that affirm who you are and say, gosh, you are such a wonderful person, and I really like being around you. Because that helps us to have the dignity and the sense of self-worth to then share with others. And finally, engaging the heart in our life, our relationships, and in our ministry as a spiritual care volunteer. You know, it's not easy to let go of your heart. Sometimes we, kind of entrust it just in our hands and we don't let go of it. But sometimes a patient will touch your heart, and it's okay just to ponder. And sometimes it may even make you cry, and that's okay too. I don't know anybody that's ever died of crying. Anybody know? Anybody? To me, it's a real emotion. And to be able to share that part of yourself and say, you've touched me today, is a loving gift. Okay, so, little summary then, since Tom is going to ring the bell. What is our role? What does this heart look like? It's a healing presence. We've already talked about that. Patients may forget a lot of what happens to them in the hospital, but they will never forget when they felt cared for. How do you come alongside a person and sit deep into their pain? And we often should also be prompt and willing, but not overarching, overreaching, able to say no. No is a good word. I'm learning that every day. And because it's very easy to get, just 6 different volunteer positions and think you're going to do them all. But you may want to narrow that down and be able to say no and say, I want more of me to be available to the patient that I'm going to serve. So how can I do that? I may have to cut back. I may have to shave back some of those hours I'm, doing too much in. Genuine and authentic, no pretense or critical judgments. Again, we are in a multi-faith, multifaceted hospital. And you'll hear this, but 43 different faith communities are what we cover. That's a lot of faith communities. And so it is not our job to judge anything that doesn't look like us. Our job is just simply to be present and loving to each person that we come in contact with. An empathetic heart and ear. Empathy is walking a mile in someone else's moccasins. Sympathy is being sorry their feet hurt. Big difference, empathy and sympathy. Unconditional positive regard, seeing every patient as unique and wondrous. I was in the ICU today, and I was with 2 patients. Because of HIPAA regulations, I can't tell you who they were, of course, but very different family situations. One was alone and very isolated. There were no family. The other had, I think, maybe 6, and in the ICU that's not typical, but there was just all this noise and wonderment and confusion and chaos and love and going on, and the other person was very much alone. And yet each one of them is unique and wondrous to our Creator. And how do we respond to that? How do we respond to that? How do we make a difference? And then finally, engage your heart in life and in your ministry. Allow yourself to be vulnerable and present in the moment. This is going to take a little while, because pretty much we have our role and we're going to go on the thing, and we've got our clipboard, and we know who we're going to visit, and everything's good, and we're going to get that done. You know, we got that agenda. But how wonderful to be led by something else, just a sense of who the Creator or God or whoever it is that you follow wants you to see. So let me tell you a little bit about the world you're about to enter. We are 175 volunteers representing 43 different faith communities, cultures, and backgrounds, and 23 different languages. So welcome to a global group, a global fellowship. The top 13 volunteers in this group logged in 1 year 3,700, it's just 13 people, 3,740 hours, and made 15,740 patient and visitor visits. Remarkable, astonishing really. We give a lot of time and love the work we do, and it's a very dedicated team. We are 19 to over 90 years of age and are required to do many of the same onboarding educational modules and learn the same protocols as staff, because what we do matters. And know there are places, this is a little plug for my office, that you can bring your ideas and talk and process. So I've given you my numbers and my email, and I think I made it, Tom. Okay, thanks so much. Bless you.
Thank you, Libby. Now we're going to start the hard stuff. This subject failed. We're going to have the Hospital Volunteer Orientation by Linda Bell-Ez. She's Director of Volunteer Services. Linda?
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank all of you for coming this evening. It makes such a difference, and it doesn't matter why you're here, but that you want to be here and that you want to make a difference in the lives of our patients and families. And so that's what's so important. What I get the pleasure of doing is making sure that all of our compliance rules and regulations that we put upon our volunteers are followed, and so that you have clear expectations of what is expected of you as it relates to volunteering and kind of following what those rules are. Okay? So we're going to do kind of a condensed version of what we do for our new volunteer orientation for our other volunteers. Because you all do, the work that you do is slightly different than our general volunteers. We have modified it a bit. The volunteer handbook that you have in front of you is a volunteer handbook that we do provide for everybody. So it will go into some great detail about some policies, procedures. Not all of it is going to be applicable to you and the work you do. So if there's anything in here that you're questioning or that you're wondering, is it really applied to me as a spiritual care volunteer? Please ask Libby or any of the staff in the spiritual care office or anybody within volunteer resources just to clarify that. Okay. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to talk just briefly about Stanford Healthcare and what is Stanford Healthcare. Talk about volunteer resources and the role that we play versus the role that spiritual care plays with you as your volunteer experience. Talk about guest service programs. Volunteers fall under a larger umbrella called guest services, and within that department there's lots of wonderful, fabulous programs that we have available to our patients and visitors. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of those, that you're educated on those, so that when you are out speaking to folks, you can help them know what's available to them. We'll review some of our policies. We'll talk a little bit about CI Care, which is our customer service modality. We'll talk about some of the benefits of volunteering, and then we certainly can leave a little bit of time for questions and answers as well. And so those are departments that they already know that information. You don't have to remember all of the information, but you can just call one number, which is that 498-333, and they'll connect anybody with any of those services. So that's a number I encourage you to remember. You can call it, staff can call it, patients can call it, visitors can call it, anyone. But